Welcome to Monarchist Minute. I'm Victor Smith, and we would like to wish all of you a very happy Memorial Day. And on this day, we begin with happy news, and then we will proceed to the sad stuff. We would first like to congratulate Prince Leopold of Bavaria on his marriage, which took place recently. As he married a commoner, the current head of House Wittelsbach would have to declare his marriage dynastic in order to have his children inherit the Bavarian throne. His wife's name is Sophie Alexandra Evkink. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. So now we move on to something that I didn't really want to talk about, but unfortunately needs must. The Los Angeles Dodgers announced a Pride Night in conjunction with, I believe, Major League Baseball. This is an initiative that Major League Baseball has condoned their teams doing. I believe only the Texas Rangers abstained from it. So the Dodgers are performing their Pride Night. The reason that it's getting talked about is that they announced that one of their invited guests was the organization called the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. Yes, I did struggle to say that with a straight face. This organization mocks nuns. They mock not just nuns, they mock the Virgin Mary under her title, Our Lady of Perpetual Help. They have done, shall we say, very unspeakable things in order to mock Christianity, in particular Catholicism. After receiving backlash, the Dodgers rescinded the invitation to this group. However, after even more backlash from the other side, the Los Angeles Dodgers re-invited them. Of note, the mayor of Anaheim invited the organization to the Angels Pride Night after the Dodgers rescinded their invitation originally. In order to attempt to make up for the damage done, today the Dodgers announced that later in the season they would be doing a faith and family night at their ballpark. Announced before all of this, the San Diego Padres will be having a Catholic night later in the season. And now I will pass the floor off to my other host, if they wish to speak on this.
Uh, all right. Well, I suppose if I can take the lead. Um, well, not the lead, but the second place out of three. Yeah, this this is the thing, guys. For all those who support this sort of stuff, we're not gonna stop pushing back. You know what? I don't know if culturally, the blood light thing is a flash in the pan. For all very well, it could be. That may have been the bridge, or maybe it was the bridge too far. But you know what? I'm sick and tired of this whole "let bygones be bygones" thing because you start trashing the nuns, and yeah, I'm gonna get a little upset about that. That's I guess without trying to beat a dead horse. The Dodgers should be ashamed of themselves. Um, and the oh the so they did the announcement thing that they've uninvited them, and then the re-inviting on the same sort of like background thing. But the reinvite was so cowardly. Like the way that it was written, it was we will continue to like learn about how we can, be better and whatnot and more inclusive and accepting, or all that nonsense. And it's like, dude, you these people who you're talking about, like they're not it reads like it reads like a fourth grader like getting disciplined by his teacher and having to write this like I will do better next time, like how in the intro of The Simpsons, like I will not set the teacher's car on fire or whatnot. Like it reads like that, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, you guys, like, what is this cowardice? And don't get me wrong, I'm guilty of cowardice too. Um, of course, but it's like, what? Like, are you afraid these people are gonna beat you up? Like the way you wrote that apology is just you guys like grow a spine, please. I'm begging you. I mean, I need to grow a spine too, but like you're a major league baseball team that can probably afford some added security if you're worried about these people physically coming after you, which I'm not saying they were going to, but like, your apology was stupid.
Of note, the former auxiliary bishop of Los Angeles, the bishop of the Catholic Diocese of Winona Rochester, Robert Barron, has called on the people of Los Angeles to boycott the Dodgers. The Catholic Archbishop of San Francisco, Archbishop Cordileone, of note, the Dodgers' opponent on June 16th is the San Francisco Giants. Cordileone has also called out the Dodgers for doing what they're doing. While the uninvite was done, he actually praised the Dodgers. When the reinvite was happened, Cordileone predictably uh, criticized the Dodgers.
Archbishop Cordioli the Based.
Archbishop Jose Gomez of Los Angeles issued another statement. I do not have that in front of me because I didn't think it was worth me reading out, quite frankly.
Oh, that is
Um,
another thing that I should notice. We should be when people have stood up and said that this is wrong, especially our clerics. We and the San Diego Padres. We should congratulate. These are the people who kind of deserve our support. So yeah, don't forget to support these people. Say good job. Um, Although I'm looking at the San Diego Padres logo and it's like maybe go back to the 1985 logo. Just saying. Okay, or the 1991. Your pick.
let me actually look this up. It appears that the Padres do also host a Pride Night.
Oh, never mind.
Again, like I said, the only team that does not host a Pride Night are the Texas Rangers.
Oh,
Now,
based.
as the quote unquote I wouldn't say I'm a liberal because I'm not really that liberal, but the quote unquote token moderate up here, I will say I don't necessarily care that sports teams have pride nights. However, I do dislike this Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence thing just because they're like really, really explicit and like it's not good taste. I
Well,
guess that's what I'm trying to say.
that's the that's
It,
the thing though. Um, there's no line you can draw other than it's either acceptable or it isn't, and this sort of thing. That
I
that
mean, judging by what I've heard and the things I've seen on social media and stuff, it borders on indecent exposure, which definitely shouldn't be allowed at a public sporting event.
no, I mean, no,
He's talking, I think he's talking about the concept of Pride Night in general, I
yeah,
think.
no, I mean, I don't think that this is something that is permissible in public under any circumstance whatsoever. I mean, the fact of the matter is that at this point it's all or nothing, and at this point,
Why does it need to be all or nothing, though?
because there is a natural law that says that this is wrong, and
There's a biblical law. I
no,
wouldn't necessarily call it natural.
no, I mean it is. I think that this is something that is written in everyone's heart, as far as I'm aware. But I mean, this is a nat. I mean, if it weren't natural law, I think most cultures wouldn't have done it. I think the only cultures that have ever uh, really been accepting of it were the ones that philosophized themselves into it, like ancient Greece. But oh, maybe not. But I mean,
Well, if I remember from sociology, there are many cultures, especially in East Asia, that had social norms and traditions around it. Although I can't really explain the intrinsicities of it as of now, because most things involving gay culture today are westernized and from a Western perspective, and most of these individual historical nuanced cultures and takes of it have been lost as a result or have been misappropriated.
well, no, I mean the thing is though is that there is an objective right and wrong, and at this point I am sick and tired of trying to compromise. And if you believe, as I believe, that God said things, and that God is the creator of the universe, then anything that is not in line with what he wills will eventually devolve into something, in any respect, will eventually be rebellion in others. And I cannot accept any longer this um this let bygones be bygones attitude. And there was a time when I would have said, do whatever the heck you want, just so long as you ain't doing it in public. Well, or even before that, uh, that old position of, I want the government out of marriage and whatnot. It's like, well, eh. The thing is that this is going to me this is a line in the sand that should have been drawn, and we should never have let it gone over. And we credit where credit's due. I think open marriages kind of had a part to play in this eventual um um, this eventual thing. I'm not just ragging on the LGBTQ community. I'm ragging on all sexual immorality here, whether it's adultery or open marriages or fornication or premarital. This is something that is so fundamentally contrary to what God had set out. For that reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and cling to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This is something so inherently contrary to one of these most basic, fundamental. I mean that's all I can say. I mean it's just mm, I guess I mean I guess this is a line in the sand, and without trying to drag on, there is a line that I'm not willing to cross, and I'm going to do everything in my power to push back until we are safely on that line. And I'm not saying go back to the 1940s where these people were beat up. I'm not saying that, but there is a and that's the thing that people use to justify it. Well, if we go back to the way it was before, well, I'm not saying we had to go back to the way exactly it was in the past. I'm not saying the past is perfect. But what I am saying is that there is an objective way, and we should strive towards that objective end uh, as far as possible. And I'm not going to compromise on this issue because at the end of the day, the only thing that I can see that is more wretched than this is the slaughtering of infants. So, you know,
That
Well,
seems,
well,
if I may give a dissenting opinion, that seems to be a huge jump between dudes liking other dudes and killing infants.
well, no, I mean the fact. No, no, I mean I'm just saying that the sexual sins. There are seven. Uh, what do you call it? The seven deadly sins, and lust in all of its kinds. I'm not just talking about uh and I'm not just talking about, homosexuality. I'm not just talking about you know, I'm talking about everything. If a man looks at a woman in lust, he's already committed adultery with her in his heart. I'm talking about all of that. That is one of the seven deadly sins. And really it all of that needs to be um it all needs to be done away with. And at the end of the because this is something that won't kill the body necessarily, but it will kill the soul. And
And it
I don't think that a state should condone such behavior.
it's
And
not up to us as individuals to basically police other people's salvation.
no,
As
it's not
God
up
gave
to us as
mankind
individuals.
free will, we have to respect their free will and the choices they make, regardless of whether or not we like them.
No, I mean the no, I mean this is the problem though, is that we're perfectly fine and dandy with accepting that in certain situations. But those certain situations, but we're not fine and dandy with accepting it in others. We're not going to. It's someone's own free will if he wants to cut off his arm, or we're not going to let him do that, are we?
Again, this is apples and oranges
It's
here.
not apples and oranges.
It really is.
Okay.
okay,
Well,
hold on, guys. Hold on. Okay, okay, hold on.
yeah, Aiden wants to partay.
Hello.
What's up,
Hello.
concealing?
I am Aiden Halberg. I'm the diplomat for Monarchist in America, previously the chaplain. How's it going?
It
Uh,
is going.
I don't like this tone because normally this is when you like lay into someone.
Oh, my dear Chuck. You're
We're about
absolutely
to get.
correct.
Oh dear.
Will, you
Yeah.
stated that it is not our right as individuals to police other people's salvation, yes?
Yes.
I will concede that this is true. However, I will raise a counterpoint. Is it not the duty of the state to protect the common good of all of its citizens?
This is
And
true, but I
and
don't
is a
think
man's salvation not the ultimate end of his common good?
in a religious sense, yes. But I would
So,
also say that
logically speaking, it is the duty of the state to ensure the salvation of those within its boundaries and borders whom it is charged to care for.
I see your point.
Charged in a sovereign way by God to do such a thing.
I validate your point. However, I am living in your walls.
No, that's me.
Well, start paying rent then.
uh, no,
Oh,
but I
I
mean,
heard.
oh, and then I would also like to add that even if you didn't think that this is something that, even if you could legitimately make an argument, which you can't, that the state doesn't have to bother with this, well, you're still allowing this in public would still potentially scandalize other people, and he who causes the least of these little ones
No,
to sin.
I don't get this whole scandalize other people. Because I'm a big person of if you sin, it's your fault. No one can make you sin.
Well,
Just
there's that, but you you had to understand that ultimately a sin is still going to be someone's choice. Like if someone puts a gun around your hand and then like puts his finger above your trigger finger, you didn't pull the trigger. But if you, eh, but if someone, okay, let's say you have someone and he is looking at his parent, his dad, who's supposed to be a good role model for him, right? And his dad um, is continuing to support a company that doesn't support or that supports degeneracy, right? He's still like buying the subscription to the streaming service or buying the beer or whatnot. And then that kid, he'll look at that and he will say, um, and he will say, well, he can use that as an excuse, as it were. Well, I know I shouldn't be doing this, but dad doesn't seem to be bothered by this, and he still seems to be, he still says his prayers and whatnot. That it would be a sin of scandal, and it didn't, ultimately, it was the kid's choice to continue to do it, but he may not have done it had he was more disposed to doing it, as it were. I don't know what the correct philosophical term is, because of his dad's scandal. So, yes, ultimately, the sin is still on his head for him doing it, but there's also a part to be said for the father causing a like, I mean, in a way, he was causing his son to sin, if that makes any sense. So that,
Conceptually, oh, pardon me, Charles.
oh, I guess that's,
Conceptually, there's no sin that exists which doesn't also detract from the community of people that one lives within. There's no such thing as like a sin that only victimizes the person who commits it, you know? If
I would
such were the
say
case, you could make an argument for some sort of religious libertarianism, I suppose, but such isn't the case.
no. I would say there are some sins that don't necessarily hurt other people.
Such as?
Well, if we want to consider homosexuality a sin, which it is in the Bible, I wouldn't say that it necessarily hurts anyone but the person who engages in such activities, and so I wouldn't see any necessarily qualm with it, even if you disagree with it as a lifestyle.
well, there you go. There's the scandal with it because, once again, biblically and according to natural principles, it is a sin, and therefore, by it being allowed, it is a scandal to society. And even if you could somehow guarantee that no one would know, except the two people.
Even if you
Um,
can guarantee that, there's all sorts of damages you're causing to the public health of a society by allowing for it.
Hello, I'm Frederick Magnolia, new head of HR. You might know me as the former treasurer. I'm just going to come in and quickly say this. I think what they're trying to say is that by you allowing it, it allows it to now become more socially acceptable. You're having the sin become more accepted, and sin should not be accepted.
yes.
Yes.
Thank you for summing up. You're really stealing my thunder. But really though,
Oh
thank
no,
you.
I'm just like, I was just trying to just get the point across. You were getting there.
Yeah, but thank you.
I
But
knew
no, but
you
in
were
all
gonna get there,
seriousness, thank
Charles.
you
You're a
for
big brain boy. I know you can do it. I know. I was just gonna help y'all. I'm just helping y'all across the finish line.
Okay. Friedrich, question. Is the red of your cube the same red as I see?
I don't know.
Well,
I don't
I
know
mean
what
it's
you
red,
see.
right? I mean
Yes, it's red.
it's a red
Yeah,
that's
yeah. The outline of it is
blending
red.
in
Yeah.
with your profile picture. That's very
Yeah, I
annoying.
know. I don't like it either, but I can't fix it.
Yeah. Sorry everyone. I just
I
had to.
also don't want to pay Nitro because I'm not paying for that.
Yeah, I'd rather give the money to like a YouTuber I like. But anyways,
I just pay for Nitro because I use the boost to help with the server.
Yeah.
oh well,
Plus
look at
it
you being responsible.
plus it lets me use emojis and gifs and
It's
stickers from
true.
other servers.
Oh well.
What?
Okay. So anyways, do you have anything else to say, Will, about?
No, I think we've beaten this topic to death, and I won't I won't not God, what
Come
was I
on,
gonna
seed the
say?
field. Do it.
I will not concede the point that I still don't think it's society's duty to police such matters, even if we find them morally abhorrent or disagree with
Do you
them.
agree that pornography should not be accessible to children?
Absolutely.
Why is that the state's job?
Because it's dangerous and explicit content that children should not be viewing.
But at the same time, it's also dangerous and explicit content no one should be viewing.
I will argue that, yeah, probably no one should be using it, but at the same time, adults have free will, and
Well, why is there a magical line that decides when and when it isn't acceptable? Because
because
because across cultures, adulthood varied from time to time. So 18, 21, 16.
okay, this is starting to sound like we're going to get into a conversation about what age is appropriate and what is the age of consent.
No,
But
we're
let's
not.
stop
I'm
the
not
Yeah,
getting into
we are
that.
not the Arizona Libertarian Party.
Yeah, no. I mean,
I thought that was New
I'm
Hampshire,
just
but
saying there's a common sense. There are things
No, there is.
there are things adults can do that children shouldn't do.
well, yes,
This
but in
isn't
this
subjective.
area, in this specific area, this is something that whether you're 16 or 26, uh, is a damnable offense if you die unrepentant, knowing its full weight and severity, um, and freely choose to commit the act. Uh, that eh, I mean,
and it's arguably a victimless crime or a victimless sin rather. I mean, obviously it's not to those that have studied the effects that pornography has on the developmental state of a brain that has been addicted to it for a very long period of time, not even to mention the psychological impact it has on habitual users, etc., etc.
yeah, I
But
mean,
it's usually the poster child for, what people would consider to be a sin that only harms the user. And yet it is something that we as a society have said, no, that's not acceptable for children to have access to.
so I guess my question there, Will, is at what point, because ultimately this sort of, as long as it's not affecting, we're effectively trying to put the non-aggression principle from libertarianism into practice on the legal question, right? So so basically we're limiting what the state has the jurisdiction to do down to speed limits and murder and waving an axe at somebody, which obviously are things the government should regulate. Except when I do it, I should be able to wave an axe at somebody. But
Hey,
No. Hey,
I'm just saying. Anyway, no. No.
behave yourself or you shall have a taste of my shoe.
Ooh, I like shoes. Anyway, it adds a little flavor when you cook a lasagna. If you
Charles,
put
I don't like I don't like it when people's breath smells like shoe polish. Let's move on.
Okay. Well, so I mean that's my question though. Where you're effectively advocating for the non-aggression principle when it comes to politics. I mean, when it comes to political force exercised by the state. But I guess my question is, where does that idea line up with your biblical worldview? Because obviously you would have to have a biblical, because obviously you're a Methodist, so you have at least a understanding of a biblical worldview. Where exactly does this line up with what is your highest good, which is God?
Well, I'll be the first to admit that my biblical worldview is usually something I hold to myself rather than to other people. And I usually try and separate my political worldview from my biblical worldview, primarily because I understand that the pragmatic essentials of running a government and running a state aren't always going to unfortunately line up with my biblical worldview. As much as I'd love them to, that'd be great. It's probably not going to happen just because the world is a very, very messy, complicated place. And there
But
are things I need to make concessions for in order to make a functioning society.
well, no. This is my question, right? So the highest good, okay, is God and what He's commanded us to do. Well, God, and everything needs to be subject to that. Now, where in religion, right, in your Methodist theology, does it say it is acceptable in the political sphere to compromise what God commands? I mean, that's my. I mean that's the question that we have to ask ourselves as religious people who are also political. Because obviously, if God is the creator of the universe, it follows that He should be everything to us and that everything should be subject to Him and His will. So, why? So, where does He say, or let's expand this to Methodist theology, because we're talking about this from your perspective. Where in Methodist theology does it say in your reading of the Bible that it is acceptable to allow something that is against the decree of God as a socially acceptable or politically acceptable institution?
I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. I'm not really much of a theologian when it comes to Methodist theology, other than the basics and how our church came to be.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, but that's what I'm saying though, is that if there isn't, I mean, if you've been able to come up with a reason why you think that you should be allowed to, I mean, there's a difference between uh accepting like when we're pushing back against abortion, right? There's a difference between accepting a 10-week law if it will stop abortion at 9 months, right? Obviously, objectively, the 10-week law is bad, but it's moving us in the right direction, right? So we're not accepting 10 weeks as something good. We're just accepting that in the interim until we can push the full ban abortion and all aborted, ban abortion. Right. So with this though, what you're essentially doing is saying, for the sake of political pragmatism, I'm going to allow this and then have no plans to eventually bring society back into line with reality. Whereas the Catholic view, from my understanding, would be to continually advocate and always advocate for what is true. And in this case, it is a man and a woman. What God has joined together, let no man put asunder, right? And and a man shall leave his father and his mother and cling to his wife, and and a man shall not lie with a man, or a man shall not lie with an animal, and a man, that is something that we need to continually advocate for. And the the thing is that I can't accept a worldview that says that it's okay if we can get the other things we want, because at the end of the day, like I say, that the only thing that I think our society does worse than this, and maybe there's an argument for other things, like our complete disregard for the hungry people on the street, but is the killing of unborn infants. That is, I mean, so I can't accept any sort of compromise here unless it's a compromise that isn't really a compromise. If it's the left caving in a certain way, and then we're continuing to push until they just have to cave, and we go back to, what was it? Warren Harding said, normalcy. That totally not
Define
made up word.
normalcy.
Normalcy. That totally not made up word. Um, but I mean,
Well,
that's
but here's the point, and here's the thing. I understand your moral duty. In fact, I actually kind of admire your sense of piety. But when it comes to the actual ways of working and ruling the world and how decisions are made and how societies are made and how they run, it doesn't work.
no.
Cove.
It has though. I mean,
It
the
really
yeah,
hasn't.
yes, it has, because the Christians in Rome were never um hiding what they thought about all this stuff, because Rome was almost as bad as we were when it comes to this stuff. Heck, I've been told, I'm not sure how true this is, that if you didn't want a child, if he was under the age of 1, you could go to a designated spot and leave him to die. Because the ideal Roman family was who just dropped? Oh, Friedrich. Because the ideal Roman family was one daughter, one son, yada yada yada. Or that's what I've been told.
Well, I know in Rome, infanticide was common, but mainly for sick or weak children.
Yeah, but I mean, and that was wrong. And the
Of
Christians,
course, it was wrong.
well, yeah, and the Christians were never hiding what they thought.
But then again, we're comparing
No, no,
infanticide
yeah,
with
no, but also,
men
I mean,
lying with men.
I no, no, I mean, I also am talking about the LGBTQ, and then the adultery and the open marriage
We
thing.
have, okay.
Well,
He's
I
he's
well,
have
talking
a,
he's talking about it in the more grander
yeah,
scape
in the grander
of
sense.
things.
So,
Not he's not trying to correlate it to homosexuality. He's trying to use it as an example of what is the grander scheme of things. What would happen is, which is, I know everyone's like, oh, it's the slippery slope, but you have to admit it's kind of true,
Sure.
though.
Yeah,
We
and thank
do.
you, Frederick, for again summarizing. So
Right.
what I'm
I
saying
know.
is that the Christians never they never hid what they thought, and eventually, through God's grace, the empire was converted, and politically, Europe morally was all on the same page. You know, gradually as Christendom expanded, and eventually the pagans and the Viking worlds decided to be good little people and convert. Well, I say little, but you know, I mean that it has happened, and we need to stop thinking like we don't have any sort of divine help on the matter. We need to stop. We need to. We need to. We need to stop thinking that God is only someone we encounter at mass on some day. We need to remember that He is an active part of the world.
Of
And
course,
remember,
God
and
is an
remember,
active part of the world. I'm just saying that it's not our duty, it's
May
not the
I
state's
interject?
duty to be a
sure.
moral police on everyone's lives outside of like serious offenses. Like, obviously, you shouldn't be able to kill people.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, you go. Sorry, Victor, you go.
Okay. I have a book from about 100 years ago. It was used as a textbook for children in school. And it talked about how the world is going down, about how morality in the United States is going downhill with the introduction of no fault divorce. Think about that.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, Will, is that right now the only reason we don't think about this as a serious offense is because it is acceptable. That is the only reason right now that we do not think of this as a super serious
And why, and allow me to say this, without using religious justification, why shouldn't it be acceptable?
Why?
because
Hold on. No, I'm sorry. I dislike this. Why does it have to not be religious justification?
Because besides the point that it's a sin, which I will concede according to the Bible, it is a sin. What exactly makes it harmful to a human being? What exactly makes it harmful to our society? What
What ma-
exactly is the issue?
what makes
no, no,
okay.
what makes it harmful is that societally speaking, now you have people who are not twisting, but changing the definition of what the sexual act is and what it is for. And by allowing it, could lead, and I think has led, to the devaluation of that institution, which, if we want to completely strip God out of the equation, which is a rather stupid thing to do, but let's go with it. Um, then, according to our best scientific guesses, the only reason we exist is to propagate our genes, and the propagation of genes requires a man and a woman. So, if you want to strip God completely out of the equation, that's why. Now, obviously, on its own, that's not really much of anything because, genes, I mean, obviously, who cares? I mean, I wear khakis myself. But the
I didn't want to make a pants
I mean,
joke,
I
but
mean,
here we
we could take
go.
the we could take the social Darwinist perspective from this, which is that homosexuality is wrong because it does not let them live on. It in fact you could say, and I do not agree with this at all, but you could say it is a suicide of the genealogy.
yes, it's called social Darwinism, the only kind of Darwinism that should be taught in school. No, I'm joking. I don't think social Darwinism
Let's
should.
not,
No,
Social
that
because
was a Freedom
Darwinism.
Tunes quote
because
with the
Yeah,
debate
yeah.
social
with straw man.
Darwinism is also kind of the stuff that got us into eugenics
Eugenics.
and
Yes,
stuff.
But
Yeah.
what I also would say, Will, is that I reject the premise that we necessarily have to make a secular argument. I think that they are useful as a beginning point for people who don't necessarily agree. And I think John Doyle made a pretty excellent video about why, from a completely secular standpoint, why you shouldn't watch pornography. Although he did say you could masturbate. No, you can't. But um, the thing, but I think that whole remove God from the equation is trying to set yourself up to lose, because yes, ultimately, if God doesn't want us to do something, he obviously knows that it's not going to be beneficial for us, because I mean, because we are our bodies and we are our souls, so obviously what's going to negatively affect the soul is also going to negatively affect the body, and vice versa.
Well,
um
if I
but
may explain why I try and push for using a secular argument, it's because if we are trying to debate someone who doesn't believe in God, any appeals we do make based on religious ground are going to be hollow. So we have to actually make an argument based off of secular grounds in order for the argument to have wider validity
yes,
outside of our own circle of faith.
and I agree. And I will leave that for someone who's more in tune with apologetics than I am, because I'm not really good at it. But what I'm going to say to you is, because you are someone who believes in the holy and undivided Trinity, that that we that this whole make me a secular argument thing isn't something for you, because at the end of the day, we both believe in the same God, the God who made heaven and earth, and you should accept uh, as reason for trying to outlaw it an argument from a religious ground if religion really means what it means. And I'm not saying this to try to diss you and say that you don't really believe in this stuff, because I was in the exact same boat like 3 years ago. But the fact of the matter is that God decreed that this is wrong, and he wouldn't have done it if there wasn't. I think I'm right in saying that for anything that is damaging to our souls, there's probably also something that's going to be damaging to our bodies. But even setting that aside, people who think that this is acceptable and know full well what God and the church have said, and are completely complicit, they are at risk of losing their souls. And that is something that is ultimately my concern. If it was just something that was ugly, and I didn't want to see it, then okay, whatever. It'd be like brutalist architecture. It's ugly. I don't want to see it, but I'm not going to shoot. Well, I'm not going to shoot these people, but I'm not going to metaphorically shoot um the philosophy of brutalist architecture, because ultimately brutalist architecture is ugly and it drags you into a mood of deep dark depression, but it's not going to kill the soul. And so that is why ultimately I do this, because, and I know that this makes me sound like holier than thou, but I ultimately care about these people, and I care about everyone, and it makes me sound like a single issue if I'm harping on this just this much. One thing my dad said is, well, why do you talk about this so much in comparison to, abortion? Well, obviously I talk about abortion a lot too, but you have, generally speaking, a lot of companies will come out and support abortion, but more companies come out and support this and have, you know, ads and whatnot supporting it. So that is why I attack this so viciously. But ultimately, I should attack every other evil that society promotes with the same vigor. But
You
I'm
know,
sorry, I was getting off track. But basically what I'm saying is, Will, is that if you believe in God and he says this is wrong, then that should be enough. Is what I'm saying. And that we need to help people understand that this is wrong. that is and do everything in our power to try and prevent it, because there are a lot of people who, to some degree or another, have fallen into this trap of thinking that this is acceptable. And it is a very hard trap to get out of, because at the end of the day, slogans like "love is love" are ultimately meaningless because you can't define a word using that word. But it's a very easy trap, because our society is so rooted in this notion of, as long as you're not directly harming someone else, then yeah, that's I guess that's
You
what
know,
I'm saying.
at the
I'm
end of
sorry
this
for waffling.
argument, I will say I'm happy you're at least able to admit and recognize that you sound kind of preachy.
Yeah, and I don't intend to. It's just that, I don't know. This is something I think might be inherent to my family. We like to waffle on when we get into points and repeat the same things over and over again without noticing it. It's a family problem. But
Uh,
uh,
That's
let's.
definitely better than my family problem.
which is,
Well, when we can get into that off
Incredible
air.
anger issues.
oh, I love, yeah.
We were just about to go to something else. Just a reminder to
Yeah, join
everyone.
in.
What's
Huh?
up?
Too late for me to join in?
Oh,
Well, if you wanted to make an argument, go ahead.
Well, no, like really, would I just be dragging this out more? Or...
I
Yeah, you
mean,
would be. I think you would be dragging it out.
All right, never mind then.
well, I mean, as long as you agree with me, you can keep
Well,
going.
unfortunately, that won't be happening. So
literally
we'll be just move on.
1984.
So, just to and to bring this all back, the soldiers in our armed forces, they died for country. They died for the freedom for us to say the things that we say on this show. They died for the freedom for organizations to do what they wish to do. They did not die necessarily for things that the Dodgers are doing. This Monday, or today, if you're listening to us on YouTube on the day this will be out, is Memorial Day. And we would like to pray for the faithful departed who died for our country in battle. Will, take it away.
Please bow your heads. Eternal rest grant unto them, O Lord, and that the perpetual light shine upon them. May their souls and all the souls of the faithful departed, through the mercy of God, rest in peace. Amen.
So, Charles, I believe it is time for your outro.
Oh, we didn't want to discuss Memorial Day?
Well, we could discuss it.
I mean, that okay, because I mean, I thought we were gonna, I thought we were actually gonna discuss it. I wrote it down as a timesheet thing, and we do the part.
I don't really. Well, I mean, there's not exactly a whole lot to really talk about for Memorial Day. It's most, it's.
We can
I mean,
talk about how the
I'm
U.S.
not trying to disrespect anyone, of course.
Okay,
We
well,
can talk about how why the U.S. is weird for having a separate day, for not having our Memorial Day on
Armistice
the
Day.
11th of November on
Well,
Armistice Day,
yeah.
like everyone else.
That's for Veterans Day. I don't know
Right.
why exactly
Wasn't
we
this
choose
day
that
set
separately.
as originally for those who died in the Civil War?
It might have been Civil War. I can't remember what the historical precedent of it is. But I
Hold on.
know there is a historical precedent on why we have two
Okay.
separate days, one honoring veterans and one honoring those who died.
Okay. Memorial Day was originally called Decoration Day. In 1869, the head of an organization of Union veterans, Major General John A. Logan, the most 19th century American name ever, established Decoration Day as a way for the nation to honor the graves of those who died in the Civil War with flowers, according to the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs. Okay, so yeah, so that is a good thing. Remember, it's a good and pious thing to pray for the dead. But these are. I mean, ultimately, I think that if we want to be brief, which I kind of am in favor of, that's a lie. No, if we want to be conscious of the fact that these men did service for their country, and as much as and ultimately whatever, that is something that we should aspire to ultimately be able to do if we have to die for our country. Who was it? Was it Cicero who said there's nothing as sweet as to die for one's country? But our nation, whether or not it should have been here, whether or not for all its faults, this is a country that is home to many people, and people in the past thought that it was worth defending. And while our defense, as it were, of this country is purely trying to save her, um, from falling apart by peaceful measures, and doesn't come anywhere near the gallantry that these men showed. Not just American servicemen, but everyone who died for his country. Um, we can take courage that these people who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life, and yeah. So I guess try and when you do things, ask, is this something that I would be willing to do? Just like with the martyrs, for who obviously died for even a higher goal than that. That if the time ever came, ask God to grant you the grace to to undergo death for so noble a cause, as defense of country, or even and preferably uh, defense, or preferably to die for the Holy Church of God, and for God.
And you bring up a point that I wanted to emphasize. If anybody has ever gone to Arlington National Cemetery or watched a video of the changing of the guard ceremony, the intricacy of the ritual and its importance, like you have to be very well trained in order to do that, and they do it all the time, 365 days a year, and whatever weather it come at. And and that is probably the highest ritual, as it were, of the American consciousness. So let's get into the discussion about the importance of ritual.
Oh, yes. A lot of people would like to say that that, why do we have all these long forms of saying things? Like why people would probably ask, well, why do we need to do this whole thing where one guard hands out the other guard for inspection when the other guard knows or the sergeant knows very well he just checked the gun 30 minutes ago, and that it's fine. Why do we have to go through that? Well, it's not
Shows dignity and honor to the dead.
that. And there's a thing that helps us focus. Now, I'm going to pull out my Missile Romanum 1962 with the prayer right before we get into the consecration. What is it called? Let's see, the prayer before subsection B, words of consecration, elevation, and consecration of the host. Okay. We therefore, O Lord, we therefore beseech thee, O Lord, to be appeased and accept this oblation of our service, as also of thy whole family, and dispose our days in thy peace. Preserve us, O Lord, from eternal damnation, and rank us in the number of thine elect, through Christ our Lord. Amen. So that prayer the priest says, right, just about a little bit later, like 2 paragraphs later, he gets into the consecration, which is like the main thing of the mass. Now, he could have just said, well, obviously he couldn't, he has to follow the rubric, but the rubric could just say, accept the sacrifice, grant us peace, and save us, Well, why is that one sentence thing that could be like done in like 7 words or whatnot, this little paragraph? Because obviously God knows. It's not necessarily for God, because obviously God knows what we're going to ask. It's for us to reflect upon. It's easier for us to reflect upon that than it is accept, give us peace and save us, than it is, preserve us from eternal damnation. Because especially the way that it's phrased, what it's preserve us from eternal, and I'm using this as a specific example, but in general, like the way that some things are phrased may convey the same thing in the but they help us focus on different elements. What it helps us, focus on, well, what would eternal damnation look like? What would eternal separation from God look like? And you think about that, and you're like, I don't want that. Um, and then you may also think, well, what's the remedy to that? Well, the priest is just going to do that. I'm not going to read the words of consecration because I'm not a priest, and I'm not going to commit that. But and then the other section,
Is it a sin to read the words of consecration if you're not a
It's not.
priest?
It's not a
it's
sin.
not a
but
sin.
It's considered improper to pretend yourself a priest and say the prayers only a priest would say during mass.
Yeah, it would. Strictly speaking, it would be a sin if I thought I was actually doing it and I pretended to actually do it, right? So like because like at the end of the day, I could dress up in the pretty vestments, say it all in perfect Latin, and do it in a parish, but the only thing that would happen is a sacrilege, a very grave sacrilege. Well, all sacrileges are grave, but if but see, out of respect, I guess I don't read it out loud. When I say the rosary, my way of doing the rosary is to read the canon of the mass and the other the mass of the faithful, essentially. So after the credo, but I don't I I read it, but I don't. I don't say it,
You're
out
trailing.
loud.
You're
Yeah,
trailing, Chuck. So, if I may, I can kind of add on to your point.
Please.
please.
So, one of the things, like when it comes to ritual and why we do all these things, any Catholic will tell you that a mass done on a sidewalk is, if it's still done in proper form, is a proper mass. But why don't we do mass on the sidewalk? Why do we do mass in these beautiful churches with beautiful artwork and beautiful stained glass, decorated altars? Why do we do that? Well, in the modern world, and this will tie in, we have such short attention spans and we don't pay attention to the important stuff. It's just swipe, swipe, swipe. We don't pay attention to anything. But when you're in a church for Mass, for example, and you say, look at the vestments of the priest, or you look at the paintings or stained glass on the wall, you look at the altar, it all draws your attention. And what that does is it all reminds you of something. When I look at the stained glass in my parish and I see St. Francis praying, I see him praying to God, which is something I should be doing. When I see the paintings of Christ suffering for our sins, I am reminded of why he did what he did and the fact that he did it for us. And when I look at the altar and when the priest is consecrating the host, it all draws your attention toward something more important, in the case of Mass, God. So ritual it's like ritual always starts as not ritual. It always starts as just something done to be done. But as time goes on, tradition and ritual prove and serve to remind us of what is important and why we still do those things. Because when you have people, and this is going to relate back to the Mass, who don't go to beautiful churches, who don't go to churches that remind them of God, that remind them of why he died for us, that remind us to pray to him. When you lose that, you start losing the most important things, right? There are people who start to think maybe it isn't the true body and blood of Christ. Maybe it isn't truly authority from God. So it's always important to have this so that you may be reminded of what's important. In the US system, or like if we were going back to Arlington, the point of, like, they could just station a guy in, battle fatigues with a full, an automatic weapon. They could just put him there and the guarding would be in practice all the same, right? Everything would be just protected like it is. But the reason that we do that is to remind people there, because the guard already knows this. It's the people visiting. It's to remind them who died and why they died for. It reminds us that those men died for us and our freedoms. It reminds that you can lose everything, but you don't because of those men. So ritual and tradition exist in the ritualistic form to remind us of important things on the earthly level or on the spiritual.
And that was Trad Raider, the person who was fashionably late today.
Hey man,
How
I'm
are you
sorry.
doing?
I was hanging out with my dad. What can I say?
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons why I think for Sunday Mass, generally speaking, the and now a lot of these prayers in the Norvis Ordo you're not required to say them because, but they're just such great reminders. I mean, one of the prayers, where is it? Hold on. Oh yes, to us also thy sinful servant. This is after the consecration, the invocation of the saints. To us also thy sinful servants, confiding in the multitude of thy mercies, vouchsafe to grant some part and fellowship with thy holy apostles and martyrs, with John the Baptist, Stephen, Matthias, Barnabas, Ignatius, Alexander, Marcellinus, Peter,
etc.
Yeah. So that one, it's not just and it proves how you can do it in different ways. Because in this case, it's reminding you that there are people who went before. And speaking of, people who died for God, look at all these martyrs. John the Baptist, he was killed by King Herod for expressing for preaching the truth, that it was unlawful for what Herod did. And Herod's wife, quote unquote, didn't like that. So Saint Stephen, killed by the mob. All of these people in this particular prayer, were martyrs, I'm pretty sure, and it reminds you, it's a reminder that these were people who have gone before, and not just gone before, but people who went before in the from a human perspective, from purely temporal perspective, they died in the most terrible way. But from a religious perspective, these people entered into heaven with a martyr's crown. That these people were that these people, just they did it, and to remind you that this is something that if God granted you the grace, well, if you were cooperating with God's grace, because He would give you the grace to do it, if you were to find yourself in that situation, then that's something that could happen to you too. And it's just in every Sunday, if a priest says this, if you go to the Latin Mass, the priest is saying this every Sunday, and if you go to a decent Orvis order, you're going to be hearing it very often. That this is something that you are reminded of, and all of these prayers, the optional prayers, have so much in them, and part of me really wants to read them all, but I'm not going to, because I know that we'd be here forever. Well, not forever, but it's just so it's such a shame when we don't, because there's nothing, because firstly, you're skipping prayers, which that's never good, but it's so sad, because all these prayers you can just sit here. Like, I think that reading from the missal, I've only been doing it for a couple weeks, but reading from the missal when I do the rosary is something that I'm probably not going to get bored of it, because it's just, there's so much here. I mean, I don't even get through from the beginning of the Mass of the Faithful to the end of the to the ablutions, or however you pronounce it, the dismissal. I've never gotten that far, and it's just, so I guess what I'm saying is, if you're someone who doesn't like ritual, if you're someone who would just rather strip everything down to the nuts and bolts, um, I guess in a certain sense, I get where you're coming from, but no. The only reason we'd strip everything down to the nuts and bolts, the only reason to only have the bare necessities for Mass, which is, the words of consecration, is under extreme circumstances. Like if you're like when Catholic priests were saying Mass in England, and the priest had to leave because he knew that someone had probably called a priest taker.
A what?
A priest taker.
What is that?
It was a job, basically, that you would go and hunt down Catholic priests. I can't remember if that's the actual title, but
It was, so yeah, once the Reformation had come to England, basically, because of Henry VIII's affinity for wives, a lot of Catholics would call him out for this, and so he just decided to not have Catholics anymore. Plus, he wanted a couple of the nice churches that we had, so he sent
by that I
out
mean all of them.
yeah, all of them. So he sent out what were known at the time as priest takers by most people, but I think their official, I think the official term was something like close to the witch hunter general, but something similar to that. And basically, they do the same thing that a witch hunter would do, but for priests. They would go find Catholic priests and either kill them,
Why did you
imprison them.
mention Witch Hunter General, given what my PFP is?
Well, don't get me wrong, witch taker general, very base job, but and it was a whole thing. There in England, in Ireland, obviously the Irish very wisely decided to not follow the trend, and they would
Oh,
station.
don't worry. Oh, don't worry. Cromwell came for them too.
Oh yes, but of course, obviously,
Time
well,
for our regular reminder on how Cromwell ruined the English-speaking world.
he very much did. But the thing that it's easy enough to see, this is the thing that anti-Catholics have found over the years. It's easy enough to kill a lot of priests. Killing all of them, however, is something that somehow you're never quite able to do. And somehow priests seem to find their way in. So the English what they would try to do is send in, or the English would guard the Irish coastline. You'll have patrols up and down or whatnot to prevent Catholic priests from from getting into the country. Um, yeah, I mean, ultimately they failed, of course, because you're trying to stop. I mean, when you're trying to stop the one true church, you're
Well,
it's double
like,
errand.
joke's on you. We'll
Cromwell
just
did the
train our
same.
own priests.
Well, Cromwell did the same thing to Anglicans too.
Yeah, and
That's
it's
because Cromwell was, dare I say it, a Calvinist.
Oh, he was in. Well, no, you gotta see. He was part of the worst, and I think I'm allowed to say this because I don't think any of these people exist anymore. The worst religious movement on the planet, Puritanism.
Puritanism was a mistake.
Oh, entirely. But here's the thing. Cromwell looked at. He basically said this. Okay, well, those Catholics, they're papists. We don't like them. Oh, but the Anglicans, they're too similar to Catholics. They're papists. And oh, these Presbyterians, they're papists too. He would have looked at a Baptist in America today and called him a
You know,
papist because
I really love it when British Republicans worship Cromwell because he's like some freedom fighter against the evil tyrannies of monarchy. I'm like, dude, he's literally a religious theocrat. That he's basically Ayatollah Khomeini, but English is what he is.
yeah, he was
Also, don't
horrible.
forget
And,
about that one time that he dissolved the parliament.
well, it was funny when
Wow,
he
he
dissolved
actually did
the
something
one
cool?
time when he basically did the thing he overthrew the king for doing just because Parliament wouldn't go
I mean, to
along.
be fair, from my understanding, like he did it for kind of a based reason, which was Parliament not being productive. But still, it's like,
Yeah.
I mean,
oh yeah,
I mean, even
democratic.
yes, I'm not gonna say it's not based.
I
What
mean,
I
even to
am just
Cromwell's
Yeah, no,
right
I
to
am.
today.
he's still a hypocrite for doing it. That's what I'm
Well,
saying.
I don't think he necessarily cared so much as he just wanted to kill Charles I because Charles I started to reintroduce Catholic elements. And that's another thing too that Cromwell did, is that there's a lot of stuff. So a lot of what we think of when we think of a
Well,
Christmas.
okay,
If I remember
maybe we
correctly
should.
from my English history, they tried to get Charles I to concede to a constitutional monarchy, but Charles I didn't have it, and then they decided to try and kill him.
Maybe we should return to the topic a bit.
Okay, ritual.
Sorry,
sorry,
I don't.
it's easy to get going when you're hating.
Yeah.
Well,
No, I mean that's fair. I have Irish ancestry, so like, yeah. But
he gets it. Yeah, no, it's just, I mean, well, talk about the destroyer of ritual and tradition there, Cromwell. But yeah, no, like I said, ritual is fairly important.
so if I could actually jump in for a sec.
Sure.
Feel free, my friend.
So I think I'll sort of add on a bit to what I think it'd add on a bit to what Trad said earlier, although I'm not entirely sure because I can't remember exactly everything he said. But I mean, well, I mean, I guess there's like two sort of levels to it. On the one hand, like, and this might seem like a weird tangent, but I promise I'll get back to the point real soon. Humans aren't like rationalist, you know, pure logic people, like the unconscious mind exists and all that. Like ritual is part of like the part of our mind where we. I mean, that falls into like the side of human behavior and thinking that involves us thinking about and discussing things we aren't entirely sure how to articulate. So the idea of saying, oh, well, we can't, if you can't articulate why this is important, then obviously it's not important and we should just get rid of it. Is like one of the heights of hubris you could possibly reach. It's really a very silly way to look at the world.
I actually agree.
And you, sorry, what?
I was about to say I actually agree with you 100%. I've always thought that humanity is more defined by our ability to make irrational thought than rational thought.
Well, yeah. But I mean, essentially, in that sense of, when looking at ritual in that sense, essentially, the idea of like, oh well, saying ritual's not important is basically saying, like, we should. You're basically suggesting that half of the tool set we use to understand the world we live in should just be thrown out, which is like ridiculous. The other way, the other thing, right? Which I guess just sort of leads into the very thing I just said. I think virtually anybody would agree that if you could find like at least one thing that you could pretty much inarguably say is a ritual, that basically anybody would have at least one where they're like they would agree, well, it's just the right thing to do. Because I mean, I believe Trad sort of rhetorically asked the question of like, well, why bother with everything we do? You could just have it be like a normal graveyard and just have a guy with a machine gun stand there. I believe he asked something along those lines as a rhetorical question. Well, here's my rhetorical question: why even go that far? Just throw everybody in a big pit. Like, we don't do that. Well, virtually every single human society since well into prehistoric times has had burial customs, because basically everybody views on some on some level that can't necessarily be properly articulated, that it would be improper to do things less reverently, in a sense. So it's just kind of like, yeah, we don't, in a literal sense, we don't need to have these rituals. We don't need to put all of this effort into the changing of the guard and the tomb of the unknown soldier and all of that, right? But at the same time, like, what kind of country would we necessarily be if we didn't grant such a high degree, or recognize such a high degree of honor, if that might be a better way of phrasing it, to those who have died in service to the country? Like, it would be improper not to do so. And, yeah, it might not really be possible for most people. I don't think I could necessarily do it either, to properly articulate why. But I don't really think that matters, because the fact that I can't explain necessarily why it would be improper to not do that doesn't change the fact that it would be improper to not do that. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
I think, yeah, I think that's all I had to say.
Okay, so
So, I think now, I suppose, since we've already prayed, let's just do a quick outro and get out of
We
here.
can always pray again.
yes, we can do that, but we do the outro first. Actually, it's kind of sad that this less than an hour and a half episode, I'm like, wow, this is a long one. When when we used to be doing 2-hour episodes every other week. Okay. Well, I don't have work tomorrow, so All right. So a very good and thoughtful discussion, everyone. I'm very happy with this. Anytime I get to read out the Missile Romanum, I call it a win. So if you would like to join us live for Monarchist Minute, then you can click that link in the description below. If you would like to follow us on Le Twitter, as more than 2,700 people, 2,700? Yeah, 2,700 people do, then you can join our Twitter by clicking that link
Link
in
in
the
the
description
description below.
If you would like to see my beautiful new profile picture, then, well, I already sold you on Discord, so yeah, thanks Trad, by the way. So yeah, then you can click that link in the
description below.
Let's see, if you would like to go down and see all the other stuffs that I deem to copy and paste from week to week into the description, then you can do that by checking the link
Link
in
in
the
the description below.
And now it is time to conclude in prayer. We've already had prayer. We had one prayer, yes. What about second?
What about second prayer?
All right.
Please bow your heads. In the name of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us of our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. All right, until next week, may God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America. And happy Memorial Day.